to brush your teeth is such an effort. To use the bathroom toilet is such an effort, and your energy is like this. To eat a little bit, such effort. And it becomes, in the last days, it becomes so painful. And it's like the soul. The soul is preparing, it's uncomfortable in the body, it's getting ready to leave. So when you're lying down on this side, you're not comfortable. So then you ask the people who are caring for you, now turn me into this side. And then you can be like that for 15 minutes before you're uncomfortable again. Please turn me this way. And practically speaking, it's so difficult to hear and chant about Krishna unless you are very practiced, like Narada Muni had practiced. And surround, look how Prabhupada's movement was taking care of him. There he was in Vrindavan, staying at the house of a devotee for years, one of his kind godbrothers, and then moving to a hospital built by devotees just to facilitate devotees leaving this world. And then the devotees who were coming and chanting with him, they were all members of the great community of Prabhupada's society. And there he was in Vrindavan. But yet it was very, very difficult. And then there is the point of the pain. He was so strong, and he resisted so much taking any medication, because again, he was afraid that it would cover his consciousness. He was so strong and determined. But yet, when there's so much pain, you can't think about Krishna. I'm talking practically speaking. For most people, some souls are completely transcendental, but some of us may not be so as transcendental. So we had to start taking medication. And the clearest his consciousness was in the morning hours. So especially then, we would gather, myself and His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, doing this just 4 days before Guru Maharaj left. He left whatever he was doing in Chowpatty, and he came to be with Guru Maharaj. And then later on, I'll get to later on in a moment. And then one day, just 2 days before he left, I had an inspiration. So I went to see him early one morning, and there was something I wanted to tell him. And that was that it's time to just let go and have full faith. I had previously asked him, what do you have full faith in? That is unshakable. And his answer was, in Srila Prabhupada and the holy names. So one day, I came to visit him early in the morning, and the Chaffetz Maharaj, His Holiness His Holiness Radhanath Swami was sitting on one side of the bed, and I went on the other side of the bed. He was just lying down, almost as bones. And I told him a story based on things that he had previously told me. I said, once there was a young boy who had faith that God existed from his birth. And one day he asked his mother, or pointing to the clouds, is that God? And his mother said, no, son, it isn't. Well then, where is God? Who is God? He was speaking to me on one side, and both Maharajas were on the other. And his mother couldn't answer him. And then He looked and did so many things in his life until while he was at the university, he came to a kirtan of Krishna's holy names, and he immediately understood that here is God in his holy names. And from then on, he met his spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, who explained who God was. And from then on, he dedicated his life to giving the holy names to people all around the world, and chanting the holy names himself, and explaining to people. He gave his life to this, and explaining to people who God was. And now, I say, it is the end of that boy's life. And he should let go of everything in this material world and hold on with full faith and place himself in the hands of Srila Prabhupada and the holy names. And at the end, then His Holiness Radharaj spoke very sweetly, and His Holiness Chakravarti spoke very sweetly, telling him, now you can let go, you can let go, you can let go to Krishna, go, where there's always the holy names, go to Prabhupada. And then he just looked at me and he said, thank you so much. And then very quickly after that, the next day, he was so weak, he couldn't speak anymore. But he was in so much pain that they had to increase the medication. Then the final day of his life, His Holiness Govindaraj, who was at a program in Houston, a big program in Houston, a kirtan program, when he heard that Govindaraj was still alive, he got on a plane and traveled 24 hours to be there with him and chant. And on the very last day, Govindaraj led a kirtan. For 6 hours, he just chanted, and Guru Maharaj by that time couldn't talk, he couldn't move, he could just breathe. And he had a sensor on his hand, his finger, and that sensor was attached to a screen, and that screen was showing up and down, showing his life symptoms, up and down, up. And we were all sitting, standing around him, just watching. Up and down, and then up again, and then down. And he's breathing, struggling, and he's in so much pain. After 6 hours of kirtan, Govinda Maharaj sat down, and another devotee, Sri Ramai Pandit, who loves kirtan, and Guru Maharaj loved this kirtan. He began chanting. Govinda Maharaj sat down. And then his pain seemed to increase more and more. And the doctor went to Singapore, said, it's only a few more minutes, hours. And the room at that time was filled with devotees. And the kirtan was going on. But he was in so much pain that they had to give him more medication. They put it right into his arm. And still, I was holding one arm, another devotee was holding another arm, there were devotees all around him. And he was in so much pain that he was squeezing my arm so heavily that the nurse was nearby, and she saw he was going like this, and she said, I think you're hurting him. But she didn't understand that I was holding him very gently, but he was squeezing my arm. There were heavy nail marks in my arm. So they had to increase the medication still further. They doubled it. And suddenly, what he feared most happened. He went into a medication-induced coma, and his head went back, his eyes went back, and his mouth was open. And his life symptoms were watching up and down and up and down. And the doctor said it was getting closer and closer. Every time it went down, we thought it was over, but then it came up. And then he was just, he was in a coma. And then Govinda stood up. This was probably around 1 o'clock at night. And Govinda stood up, and I thought maybe he was going to leave because it was so late at night. But instead, he stood right next to Govinda Maharaj and began chanting loudly in his ears, Radhe Shyam, Radhe Shyam, Hare Krishna. He began singing the Hare Krishna mantra. And Govinda Maharaj was in a coma. And suddenly, Govinda Maharaj's mouth begins to move. And he begins chanting. We can't hear him, but his mouth is moving perfectly in time with Govinda Maharaj's chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. And it was a strange thing that at this most private time, this most solemn, deep time, when when someone's leaving this world, at this time in the world there are devotees holding mobile phones above him, and live streaming this great soul dying onto Facebook. So normally you'd think this is the most terrible thing. How could you do this? But thousands and thousands, literally thousands of people were witnessing that this soul, who had given his life to Prabhupada and Prabhupada's movement and to the holy names and to preaching, and maybe he was imperfect, but he was doing something that was actually a miracle. He was chanting Krishna's names while they were home. And we're all, the devotees are chanting, we're right around him, we're encouraging him, you're doing great, Hare Krishna, you're doing great. And he was doing great. And then during the Brahma Muhurta hour, the screen went down and didn't come up again. And the kirtan, Govinda Maharaj did this kirtan, and it felt just like the spiritual world had opened up. And we saw how Krishna, how by Prabhupada's mercy, by the mercy of the movement that Prabhupada created, that provided a place in Vrindavan, a temple in Vrindavan, a community of devotees to support him. His Holiness Bhagavad Maharaj had sent brahmachari assistants to take care of him, because it's the most difficult thing in the world, practically speaking, to take care of a person who's leaving this world, who's terribly sick, because you have to be completely unselfish. And the ISKCON world had supported him, and Krishna had performed a miracle, allowed him to chant holiness. And the whole world was witnessing it somehow or another on Facebook. And the atmosphere was just like, there was no one who doubted that this great soul had given his life to preaching and going back to home to God. So this is my answer to the question, of Narada Muni lived such a perfect life, and he was perfect, and he followed everything. He was just perfect, and he ended up back to Godhead. But what happens if We try our best, but our best may not be perfect. But we sincerely have tried our best. Will Krishna take care of us? Will he give us mercy? And the answer that was undoubtable from this incident is yes. So although there are many things that we have to learn from the pastime of Narayana, and there were 4 truths from this one story. Could you just put all 4 of them on that one, and then go to the next one? No, to the other side. The 4 truths. The root cause of our current suffering is difficult to discern because we don't know where it really began, and therefore it's complicated to dissolve. We have to solve our difficulties at the root ultimately, at the ultimate cause. And life's challenges should be viewed through the lens of transcendental knowledge. We should see the world based on the transcendental knowledge that we receive from Shastra, from Sadhu, from Guru. 2, 3, we should take advantage of difficulties. No one likes difficulties. We don't invite them to come. But when they do come, and they must come, because it's the nature of the material world that they come, we should take advantage of them and deepen our spiritual advancement by taking shelter of Krishna. And go through life in this way. It's easier said than done, of course, but we should try our best. And then truth 4, in every circumstance, we should turn our mind to Krishna and take shelter of him. And there's one more. Press the enter button 2 times. Yes. A 5th truth, TOB and NOM, which this pastime of His Holiness Guru Maharaj explains. TOB, we should try our best, but yet, NOM, we are in need of mercy. And that mercy, coming from Krishna, of course it's causeless, but when we try our best, and this has happened to so many of Prabhupada's disciples, and not only Prabhupada's disciples, but disciples of Prabhupada's disciples who gave their life and tried their best, and Krishna really did protect them and give them mercy at the end. Okay, we shall end here. You've all listened very attentively, and I thank you very much. We even have, by the mercy of C.C. Bonatai, by the mercy of Narapata Sakti, Srila Prabhupada, who fulfilled the desire of his Guru Maharaj and Sri Chaitanya Prabhu. All I can say is we are very, very fortunate. We are very fortunate to be under the shelter of Srila Prabhupada, despite whatever imperfections may be there. And there are imperfections there, always. But despite those imperfections, Prabhupada's movement gives such a facility of having a community of devotees, an opportunity to serve, instructions, books, association, sadhu, such an opportunity to achieve the purpose of our life in achieving Krishna. Okay, thank you very much.
श्री श्रीराम सर्वगणता विशाखा की जय, श्री सीताराम लक्ष्मण हनुमान की जय, श्री राम की जय, श्री प्रहलाद नरसिंह देव की जय, जय गुरु श्री